Hello, welcome back to my channel, Snips by Kelly. I'm Kelly, and today we're going to continue part 3 of 5, creating with everyday moments. We're going to be using the brand new Gnome for All Seasons Autumn collection, and it's this great paper pack of fall papers that actually have an option to add gnomes. So one side is this gorgeous fall hero type paper with the pumpkins and the sunflowers, and then it also lends itself to fall on the other side. But if you are a gnome lover, you will be so happy. So this is simply the paper pack, but there's an entire bundle for this collection of all kinds of goodies, including an adorable gnome thin cut. If you're not into gnomes, no problem. We have some fall word paper here. We have a little bit of crisscross. We have a great stripe. We have, of course, the gnome side of the busy pattern and then just the fall side of the busy pattern. And all of these papers are incorporating something new. So we have 3 traditional colors that are recommended colors. We have Espresso, Honey Butter, and Scarlet, but we have 3 new ones here. We have 7 new colors altogether, but in this collection, they're featuring Limeade, they're featuring Acorn, and they're featuring Pumpkin. So within these patterns, you're going to see these new colors incorporated throughout this line. And so hence they released all 7 of our new colors on August 1st, an entire month early, since you were getting sneak peeks of it in this pack. There's also a 12 by 12 sticker sheet that comes with the paper pack. You can get the paper pack by itself or with the sticker sheet. And I believe I just used one tiny sticker off the sticker sheet. I wanted to embellish with some thin cuts because I have other plans to create a workshop out of this whole line, but I just wanted to borrow some of the fall papers for these photos that you see here. So these are some photos of my son Zachary and Tommy Cat. And Zachary and Tommy Cat have been buddies for years and years. Tommy isn't with us anymore, but Tommy would follow Zachary everywhere, and Zachary would come and lay on the lawn and hang out with Tommy. Well, it was time to pick apples, and I asked Zach if he would help me pick apples, and I could hear him outside talking to someone, and I kept thinking he was talking to me, and come to find out, Tommy had followed him into the apple tree, and he sat up in the apple tree the entire time that Zachary was picking apples for me. So I had some sort of weird odds and ends here, not even the best photos, but I loved that day. And I loved how Zachary, even though he's a grown-up, still lays on the ground and plays with Tommy. So I really wanted to document this story about picking apples and Tommy. And there is some scarlet. So I have a white daisy that is 8 1/4 by 9 1/4 and a scarlet that is 8 1/2 by 9 1/2. And I really want to just really fill up the photos in the center. So it's going to have, I think, 11 photos all together. And then I want to make a little bit of a patchworky feel around the outer edge, which is a go-to. I don't always put all of these clusters of photos in the middle. Typically, it might be a photo block of 4 photos, like 4 4x4s. So I kind of really only have these photos and no other photos, and they're sort of just these odd ones that have been sitting in a little pile in my little organizer, and I'm like, it is time to use these up and tell this story. So I cut 2 by 2 squares, and I used 1 2 3 4 5 patterns and cut 3 squares each of those patterns to make 15. Then I needed 5 more cardstock pieces to make a total of 20 for each page. So you need 22 by 2 squares for the left and 22 by 2 squares for the right. So I basically am just building a quilt. I've done this many, many times. In fact, I did this with a very quick and easy Hey Handsome layout using up some acrylic shapes. I can link that in the description, but it is a go-to, especially if you have small pieces left, or if you have, say, a combination of fall patterns. Like, let's say the last 2 falls or the last 3 falls, you have these odds and ends left over in your pack, but not enough to create full pages with. You could combine all of your fall peepers in one and create your 2x2s and create that nice quilt background. So I'm just going to make that nice quilting background and then adhere those in place. But to add a little interest, I cut some additional 2x2 scarlet pieces, and I will pick a pattern, any pattern really, and then every time that pattern is repeated, I will put an additional scarlet triangle on there just for a little added interest. Then when you put those photos over, and this is so great. So on the left, I have 6 3x4 photos. On the right, I have, and they're all horizontal. And on the right, I have 2 4x6 verticals, and I have 1 3x4 horizontal, and then those littler ones I made on my Picture-Mate, and they are 2x3 each. And then we have some choices. So this is our Cozy Up card making workshop stamp and thin cut set. Now that is in the Cozy Up card making workshop kit that was so popular it completely sold out within the first few weeks of this catalog cycle, but they ordered it again, and we do, at the moment of this video, we do have it, and has the great scribble circle and leaves. The other one is the this one here is the lined leaves, which are very large leaves that show the veins of the leaves, and it has thin cuts to go with them, and they're very, very detailed. And then the other one is another popular one called Seasonal Goodie Baskets, and this one also sold out and is back now. Now these will not be reordered again if they sell out, but the goodie basket has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 thin cuts and 10 stamps in it. And then these leaves, of course, are gorgeous. I always say every year I am not buying any more leaves. I have enough leaves. I also can make leaves on the Cricut, but every year I fall for them. I love them. We also actually have Hey Friend, which is adorable with the scarecrow. And then we also have the Cozy Up scrapbooking stamp, which is the pumpkins. I opted not to use either one of these, even though I love the pumpkins and the mushrooms and the little snail, and I love Hey Friends, and I'm definitely going to use both of those. But because this layout was a little bit more about Harvest and Apple and about Tommy and Zach, I opted to just go with these 3. So what I did is I layered 2 pieces of cardstock. So this one, it happens to be shortbread and espresso, and I was able to put all 5 of those leaves and cut 10 of those leaves. Now I have way too many. We are not going to need all of these, but I usually, when I get them out, just simply like to make a bunch so that if I need them for other things, or if I don't quite know which ones I want. But we have some espresso, we have some shortbread, we have some toffee, we have the new pumpkin pattern, and we also have the new limeade pattern, and then we have Jade. So the new colors again in this collection are pumpkin, limeade, and then I've added some Jade accents, and then we're also using Acorn. Okay, so those of you know that there's about a month left for our retired colors, for what's left of our retired colors, and then we have 7 new colors. We have some other colors that debuted as well. We have Royal, we have our color of the year, which is Journey. We have some others as well. So what I'm doing here is I'm stamping tone on tone. So this limeade pattern, I'm going to stamp limeade on top. The Jade pattern, or the Jade cardstock, I'm going to stamp Jade on top. The pumpkin pattern, I'm going to stamp pumpkin on top. The espresso, I'm going to stamp espresso on top. And then for the shortbread, and the Acorn, I just stamped Acorn on both of those. And I'm going to do some treatments and some little things here with them. I'm going to do some ink blending and also some a little bit with Stickles to make some really pretty leaves. But this is a great stamp. The lined leaves is a great stamp. It really stamps nicely. I didn't even season it very much at all, as you can see, and it stamps so nice and crisp and clear. It's a really nice one. So these are larger leaves. A lot of these leaves I'm probably going to layer and tuck under and cluster on the layout. But they would make great, larger embellishments on scrapbook pages. And then the Cozy Up Stampin' Thin Cuts are a little bit smaller leaves, not a little bit, a lot smaller leaves. And so it's kind of nice to layer some larger ones and some smaller ones. But this would, of course, make, I know it's predictable, but a gorgeous fall wreath, a wreath layout. I love wreath layouts. You've probably seen me use circles in wreath fashion a lot because it's one of my favorite things to do, whether it's wreath toys for a play layout or wreath leaves or wreath flowers or wreath vines. And it's just as beautiful in leaves as it is in flowers. And sometimes I forget about leaves. You can literally have winter leaves and summer leaves and fall leaves and spring leaves, and you can actually coordinate seasons with them. Sometimes we only think about using leaves in the fall, but it is a great way. I've seen some gorgeous winter pages with leaves. These would be so gorgeous with some Christmas colors and creating Christmas leaves, and even maybe some silver accents, gold accents. So I'm basically just coming in here and doing some of these just to show you, and then I will finish the rest of them and have a bunch to choose from. I don't hardly use, I don't know, maybe 8 of them or 9 of them or 7 of them, something like that. But you can use the ones that you love, and they're great accents to put on the pages. So I'm just going to go through here and do this. So hopefully you've seen our gnome for all seasons. I would love to know if you guys are gnome people or not gnome people. I have lots of Snips by Kelly paper crafters that are crazy decorators, that they do beautiful things, and they have all kinds of gnomes, wooden gnomes, all kinds of gnomes. I do have some Christmas gnomes and gnomes that I bring out in certain seasons. I'm probably not as crazy as some. Some people are just absolutely gnome crazy. And then there are other people that don't care for them. But if you check out the Gnome for All Seasons Autumn, you'll see the cute gnome, and you can change out his little clothes with the thin cuts, or her little clothes, and decorate your page, or actually make decorations for your home and other things with them. And there's a whole bundle. There's a workshop, a really cute workshop, so you can check that out. Of course, the bundle is always discounted. So here is this pile of pretty. So now I'm just taking a marker or anything round that happens to be within arm's reach, and I am giving it a little curl, giving the leaves a little curl. I have my flat water brush. You can use your finger, you can use another little paintbrush. I'm just squeezing out a little goldenrod Stickles, and I'm just brushing those on the leaves, not even completely evenly, but just getting a coat on it so that they have a little bit of a speckle, like they're sparkling in the sunlight. It's so pretty. I wish you could see them up close. I do a close-up video when I get them all done so that you can see how pretty that is and how fast. So one of the reasons that I stamped on cardstock and pattern paper is it saves me having to color every leaf in some way. So in the last video that I did, let's see, I think it was the last video we did it wasn't Everyday Moments. It was our brand new memory lane. I just did a process video for our son's first home, for a layout on our son's first home. Oh, here's our close-up. Oh, good. You can kind of see it, how shimmery and sparkly. They're so pretty. Now, I am showing you, you want to wash your Versamat. You want to wash your brush right away, because that is glitter glue. And so that will stick in there. Or I do actually have two of those flat brushes, and I use one for things that are sticky. I still wash them really, really good. So now I'm going to make some of these icons from the seasonal goodie baskets, and this is ideal for cards. But because of the apple picking, and that we pick apples every year, we have multiple apple trees, and they're not fancy schmancy apple trees. They're just apple trees that are like all over around on the ranch. And I do make apple jelly, apple jam, apple butter, apple crisp, apple pie, apple strawberry apple. Oh my goodness, I make a lot of apple. So I'm showing you again, stamping on cardstock doesn't mean it has to be just flat. You can come back in with your color. So on the apples, I have a dark red tri-blend, I have a light green tri-blend, and I have a red-brown tri-blend. And those are the only three I used on all of these. And I have the light side of that red-brown, and I'm just adding a little accents in the basket. I did some dark red, the light side of dark red on the apple, some brown and some green on the apples. I did a little shading on the little crate, and the crate I made in espresso. The scarlet are the apples, and the acorn is the basket. Of course, I use pumpkin for the pumpkins, and then the little bow for the crate is scarlet paper. Stamped them all in intense black, and then did that shading. And even though you stamped it and you cheated kind of, and you stamped it on the color, it saves so much time, you guys. Even though I'm coming back in with a tri-blend and just doing a little bit of touching here and there to do a little bit of shading, it's so much faster than stamping those on white and coloring all those. Now that has a place as well. I do that all the time, and I love to do that. But by doing the leaves, by stamping on cardstock, and by stamping on pattern paper, and then by doing the seasonal goodies that way as well, and just adding a few marker accents, look how fast it was. It was so fast. So now I'm going to grab a few of the cozy up pieces. I just made 2 of each of the pieces in the cozy up and 4 rings. I don't use them all because of course you only need little bits of the scribble circles to show, but I have those same 3 colors here, and I'm going to do the same thing. So on the shortbread leaves, I created these maple leaves on shortbread. I'm coming back in with the light end of the red brown and just doing some of the lines, doing a tiny little bit of shading, nothing fancy, just adding a little bit of tone inside that. I do the red leaf, the scarlet leaf, again with the light side of the dark red blend. I do the pumpkins, the leaves with the light green, the dark side of light green, not pumpkins, the floral, the large floral. And so you're probably wondering about the large floral, how I'm going to handle that, because the whole thing is pumpkin. I'm just simply going to leave quite a bit of it pumpkin colored. I'm going to come back in and choose some leaves to color with the red-brown blend. I'm going to also choose a couple leaves within the cluster to color with the dark side, light side of the dark red. And you'd be amazed at how you can color on color. And it's okay. It still gives it that red tone, and it makes it look like there's different tones within the color. So you decide. You can use colored pencils, you can use paint wash, you can rub with tri-blend or with your stamp pads, you can use your watercolor brush and paint with your stamp pad. You can color every single one of those pieces with tri-blends. But doing what I did today, especially on a layout like this where I have a hodgepodge of photos, and it's going to be a treasured layout, but it's not going to be on display. It's truly for me because I love Zachary and Tommy so much, and they help me every year, and Tommy was always just a fixture around the ranch, and how he followed Zachary everywhere. Tommy wasn't the friendliest of cats, and he wasn't always nice to the other cats. I had to get on to him sometimes because he kind of ruled the roost like he was the boss, and you can't hardly see him too well. They're not the greatest pictures, which sometimes I do scrap pictures when they're not the greatest because they happen to just be what I have. I wasn't thinking about scrapbooking that day. I just grabbed my camera and took those photos quickly, and Zachary wasn't a willing participant necessarily. He was just out messing around, and I happened to capture it. So I wasn't posing them or getting the right light, or so I have been trying to work a little bit on my picture skills because some people are amazing. Like some people take the most amazing cell phone pictures. I have gotten much better, and I'm also better about rearranging. So, all right, so here we go. Now we are done with our bits. I took a 3-inch thin cut, circle thin cut, and I had some scraps, so I just went ahead and used the thin cut on the scraps so they're not whole circles even. I cut a couple 2x3 pieces of scraps of the pattern that we're laying here, as well as white. I don't end up using the 2x3 piece that is the word search. So I was thinking about using that word search paper and then highlighting with a marker one of the words, which would be a great technique for a card even. But I've actually cut some circles. So I have a partial shortbread circle. I have a 3-inch white circle. I do end up, I believe I may add, no, I don't. I don't add another white circle, but I think I do add another pattern circle. So that back of that orange leaf is the Limeade crisscross pattern. So I think I do use that on the back side. So I have our alphabet, that is our wood grained alphabet. And I wanted to make a custom title saying, I pick you. So they're picking apples, but Tommy picks Zachary and Zachary picks Tommy. So I wanted it to say, I pick you. And I love our alphabet die cuts for that reason. And you get tons of them. They're less expensive than our acrylic alphabets. And you have lots of letters in there to choose from. And so I'm just arranging I pick you on the white circle, and then I have to add some color. So right now I have just that shortbread background, and I end up adding a partial scarlet circle to the back of that because it just doesn't pop. It just doesn't stand out enough. And so I kind of play around with that a little bit, but I love the idea of creating a cluster with the apple basket. So I didn't talk about the apple basket, but the apple basket thin cut from the Cozy Up Stampin' Thin Cuts has a slot in the top that gets cut when you cut it as a thin cut that you can tuck things into. So in the seasonal goodie baskets, you could tuck flowers in there for one season, gifts in there for one season, hearts in there for Valentine's, apples in there, Easter eggs, there's fireworks, there's pumpkins. So you can change out the basket with the seasons, and I love that. It's so cute. You can attach the handle or not attach the handle, and then it has a little additional thin cut for the top of the basket. So I could have had the handle in the back of the basket or have it coming over the front of the apples. And I'm just using a few of those scribble circles. So I love, love, love. So wouldn't you know, every time I go and I figure out how to make something on the Cricut, they'll make a thin cut for it like 3 months later or 6 months later or a year later. I remember I worked for like a week trying to make a windmill, because we didn't have a windmill on our collections. And then I can't remember what collection it was, but they came out with a windmill. And I did that with a ship's wheel too. We didn't have a ship's wheel, so I took pieces and I like welded them together and did everything that I could to make my own ship's wheel for a certain paper line, and then they came out with it. So never fails, as soon as I make scribble circles, they come out with a wonderful, perfect thin cut. And I love it because it's smaller. I can make scribble circles on the Cricut any size, and I did do a process video, very quick, very easy to do. I'll relink that here in the description of this video if you want to learn how to make those on the Cricut. You can make them any size and any color, and they've been sort of like, you know how you go in spurts where you kind of have this thing that you use, kind of like the quilting pattern. I've used it 2 or 3 times in the last several months, and then I might not use it, and then what's old is new again. I love going through old workshop guides, whether they're my guides or whether they're other company guides. I like to go back through them because what's old becomes new again. A trend that hasn't been around for a while becomes a new trend again. It's kind of like clothing, right? Or music. It's like things go out of style and then they come back. So I'm just, again, I think I've sped up a little bit of this because this is the part that gets a little long with me. I like playing around with my bits, and I'm kind of trying to anchor this cluster with the larger leaf and then have a little bit of a scribble circle sticking out, and then I want to pop up the apples, and it's okay with me that it goes over the apple tree photo because you get it. 3/4 of the apple tree shows, and it's just giving you the gist. So I have the series of Tommy and Zachary playing, and Zachary's head is down in the first 2 because he was playing with Tommy, and then I had poked my head out the door and I said, "Zachary, look at me." And then he looked up and he was laughing. And so I got that one of him looking, and then they're really hard to see in the photos, but they're super close up of Tommy way deep down in the apple tree, like I'm talking deep. So you can only see on the right side Zachary's legs sticking out from under the ladder, and Zachary is just under 6'7". He's my tall boy, and so it's kind of hard to get a feel for how tall everything. It isn't the tallest apple tree. It's not a very big apple tree. It does get beautiful blossoms on it when they don't freeze out or drought out. I'm sorry, the South Dakota weather is harsh sometimes. We have had a lot of drought lately, and I make all of these jams, and so it's a big part of our lives. You know, we have choke cherries, we have wild grapes and creeks that have wild grapes, we have wild plums, choke cherries, wild plums, wild grapes, and then of course we have our apple trees. What else do we have? Those are the primary ones that I use, and I make jams and jellies and plums. You guys, wild plums makes the most gorgeous juice. It is this rich, almost mulberry, purpley color. It is so beautiful. But I digress. I'm just still here. You can see I'm still playing with the clusters, trying to get them all to balance. So I wanted to toggle the title circle in that open space between the 2 photos of Zachary and Tommy. There's kind of a lot of green in there, and I don't need to see his legs in both of those. And I liked toggling that there and creating a little bit of interest right there. And then I'm actually creating a visual triangle. So I have a cluster that I've started up on the left page, one on the lower right of the left page, and then crossing over to sort of the middle bottom of the right page. So that does give me my cluster of 3. I am going to make a tag for journaling because I do want to tell a little bit of a story. And then I don't end up using that other little piece. It is colorful. So at a glance, it's a little hard to photograph because there's so many patterns in it. Up close, you definitely can see it's vibrant. But if you want to tone it down, I would simply add a little bit more neutral cardstock, a little less pattern and a little more neutral cardstock. It is a pretty busy pattern that I've got going on there with a busy amount of photos. Now, had I just used that series on the left of Zachary and not put Tommy in there, that might have helped some of the busyness, but I really needed Tommy in there. These are the only photos I have of this particular day or any of the photos of the sort, because I don't typically run outside and take pictures of Zachary and Tommy. It just happened to be something that I did, and I'm so glad I did, because Tommy did get old and ended up dying, but and going on to heaven. But he and Zachary were buddies for a long time. So I'm getting there. I did decide to use a blending brush and put some of our new Limeade ink on the circle, did the clustering there, added a cluster over on the right, flipped over that got to get my colors, pumpkin to the Limeade. I'm learning all of our new colors. I'm getting them pretty good. I am pretty good. I use our colors so much. I'm usually pretty good. But boy, there is a lot of colors that we've had over the years. I would love to hear from some of you that have been with Close to My Heart way longer than me and know if you get mixed up on colors. But I use them so often, I can just rattle them off. But then it takes me a minute for the new ones. So what I do for my tags are typically 2 by 3. I put them up in the corner of my Versamat and I make a mark at the 1/2 inch on both corners, and then I snip it off. Then I take that snipped off piece, rotate it to the other side, and use it as a pattern to snip it off so that your tag is perfect every time. So I will add some black lines around the tag for some interest. I think I will add a hole and some twine. Twine seems super fitting for this layout. And it's just very country and nothing fancy. And as you can see, it's way into the fall and it's super dry out and the apples are falling off and it's time to get them. When I make my apple jelly, if I'm making jelly, all of these apples get washed really well, and then they go into crock pots, big crock pots, stems and seeds and all. I quarter them and I put them in the crock pot, and then I cover that crock pot with water, and then I simmer them for hours and hours until I can mash them into juice, and then I run them through the strainer and get all the pulp out and the seeds out, and then I get all that fresh, real, live, organic apple juice. And if you've ever had homemade jelly out of homegrown organic apples with no chemicals or anything, there's no comparison. Another favorite of my family is strawberry rhubarb. So rhubarb, if you're not familiar with rhubarb, is like a weed, and it's really tart. Some of you may be very familiar with it, and we add apples and strawberries and different things to rhubarb, and there's the same thing like zucchini. There's rhubarb crunch, there's rhubarb bars, there's rhubarb cake, there's rhubarb pie, there's strawberry rhubarb jam, there's rhubarb jam. Okay, so now I'm getting there, and I do want to add I thought that when I had looked at this, it was mostly fallish themes, which would totally go. I love the apple sticker, but I couldn't make the orientation work. And there was one sticker on there. What does it say? Blessed, I think, or let me see here. It says, so very blessed. And I do feel that way a lot. I don't mean to sound like a cliche, but I am really blessed that on occasion I can just peek out the kitchen window or walk outside. And my son works on the ranch, the youngest son. The oldest son worked on the ranch for a time, and then he found his calling, and he owns and operates two semi-local hardware stores. And he is a whiz at that. He is the fix-it in town, and he and his family have been doing that for years. And so our youngest is on the ranch with my husband, and so I love being able to have lunch with them sometimes and see them sometimes when I'm home from work, and it's just wonderful. I feel blessed to have. It's just really simple, So this series has been about everyday moments. If you're hitting this and this is your first one, it's actually the third out of 5. So the first in the series we created with Irresistibles, and we did made some of our own custom patterns and colors, and we created a layout now I'm drawing a blank, with my grandson Waylon, and it was a toy layout, and we created a toy wreath. The second layout was also of a grandchild, Claire Adeline, and we did a silly series of photos of her getting in our costume box. And now this layout is just a plain old ordinary everyday moment on the ranch that really probably means nothing to anyone except for Zachary and I, but I know he's going to love seeing Tommy, and he'll be like, "Oh, Tommy." So now I have some of our cozy up dots, and I'm just embellishing. So it's hard to see on the photo, but there's all that shimmer in there. There's the shading that we did with the tri-blends. We've got our little scribble circle to add interest. We did a little blending with the blending brushes with the ink on the title. We have some more texture with the wood grain alphabet for the title, and we have the dots. So even though it is so easy and so simple, we packed a lot of punch in there, 11 photos and a lot of fun technique. So I hope you found this useful, and that you have a use for a layout like this, maybe with your own leftover patterns, and some photos that you just don't quite know what to do with, that are just sort of left over of an everyday moment. I hope you'll share. I hope if this was useful and you enjoyed today's video, that you'll hit the subscribe button and follow and notifications. It sure goes a long way on YouTube, and it helps me out, and it puts you in line to receive the next video next week, the 4th out of 5 of Scrapbooking Everyday Moments. I hope you enjoyed our Gnome for All Seasons Autumn, which is a hint. If we have a Gnome for All Seasons Autumn, I wonder, will we have a Gnome for any other seasons? Happy scrapping, everyone. Thanks for hanging out with me. Bye-bye.